Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go. The next few weeks, many of you will notice that I'm talking a lot about Saturn. And that's because Saturn is doing its last pass in the sign of Pisces. It is retrograde and therefore in late degree Pisces. So depending on the sign that the moon is in, the last aspect that the moon will geometrically make to another planet may well be Saturn. And depending on if it's what we consider a harmonious aspect or a challenging one, determines how I'm talking about the energy of those days. What I find interesting about this is we are leading up to that 2nd September eclipse. It's at the end of this week. It's a new moon solar eclipse. And of course, last week, it's 2 weeks in between, we had the lunar eclipse. So eclipses travel in pairs. So there's always two, a couple of weeks apart, and sometimes there's three. But in this period, we have the two. And I will be talking more about that eclipse when I get closer to the end of the week. But what it signifies with this opening of the week is we are in the waning moon cycle. So it's really valuable to be working on things that you are in the process of wrapping up, completing, putting to bed, deciding to shelve, getting to the end of a certain chapter of before you initiate and begin again with that fresh start with the new moon cycle. So on Monday the 15th, the moon is in the sign of Cancer. We also have another picture in the sky between Venus and Mars, a harmonious picture, a sextile we call it. And so that's speaking well about people being able to meet one another on common ground, being able to come to resolutions with certain things. When Mars and Venus are jiving, it can be quite chemical. It can also be engaging in not only a romantic, but friends connecting way or ideas connecting way. So I see this as being a highly creative day. That moon is in cardinal water, Cancer, and it also is getting this energetic lift from the sextile between Mars and Venus. So that speaks very well about creative engagement, people coming together for common goals, maybe sharing food together, making a nice banquet or meal. But that can also be a metaphor for how we feed one another with ideas and that curiosity that really brings more beneficial relationships where we create a sense of home and community. And it's as the moon travels through the sky, it will finally meet with Saturn. So when we get into Tuesday, this is also similar to what I spoke about yesterday, but it has more kind of texture to it in like challenges or people kind of moving through points of anger or frustration. Some of us may feel this, especially in the late afternoon, early evening, but there's a lovely picture between the moon and Jupiter in the sky in the morning, which really invites in potential for opportunity and people feeling a sense of abundance. If you have the luxury of enjoying a meditation or quiet moment this morning of the 16th, really sink in to that sense of abundance with what we get from nature, great goddess energy, what we get from whoever it is we call family, our roots, our home, and for some of us, places where we came from may feel very fraught right now, or places where we're going because of the great tension with isolation that has been intensified over, quite some period of time. But we are at this real polarization right now where something has to give. But on a day like today, on the 16th, we can bask in and appreciate what the connections are. And as I said, it may feel a bit fraught for some of us as the day goes on. Maybe the connections are feeling a little tense. We're frustrated with someone. We're in a sense of, I know myself, I'm going to be driving that day. I'm thinking, well, I might be in traffic wanting to get home. So there is that push pull tension aspects. But what's really important is to tap in to wherever the frustration is coming from and work with that as how can I generate fuel for constructive activity and not implode or ignite or get angry when that isn't really going to get through or get me what I want. There's a particularly juicy period from the times I give her Eastern time. So if that's not your time zone, you'll need to adjust. But pretty much around 7 o'clock in the evening through the end of the day, we're in this energy that's very much about, okay, where's the focus? What am I completing? What am I wrapping up? What am I making a commitment to? And even who am I breaking bread with and just really enjoying this evening? It's really important to be present and appreciate whatever's around you on this particular evening because you want to magnify that. And if you're working on something that you're getting to a point of completion or feeling like this is where you want to bring it in so that you can get more energy when that new moon kicks off the end of the week, then it's also really important to remember the restorative aspects of the sign of Cancer, which reminds us to take care of your physical and emotional body, nurture yourself and the people around you that you love, or the creatures and garden around you that you love. Eat foods that are sustaining and sustainable. And the moon goes void, of course, at 11:14 p.m. this evening. And it enters the sign of Leo the next day, the 17th, at 1:20 a.m. So when the moon is void, of course, we usually say that it's best not to start anything new. Of course, that's very late at night, Eastern time, but some people are night owls. When the moon is void, of course, in the sign of Cancer, which is its natural sign, it's still kind of cooking in its harbor. It's not that it doesn't need or benefit from other geometric aspects. earlier when it did that final trine to the planet Saturn, it certainly got a nice oomph of support and ability to structure things that are meaningful. But we still can basically cook the stew. And I think for many of us, that might be winding down. And as I said, doing what's best to restore the body for the next day, taking a bath, a shower, swim in the pool, if that's something that's available to you. These are ways to restore and good night's sleep. So once the moon is in the sign of Leo, and we're on Wednesday through part of the day on Friday, we are in this really nice, again, creative energy. So this week, you can hear, has a lot of energetic support with aiming towards those creative goals. What is it do you want to build, and with whom do you want to build it? And if it turns out that the person or the people you thought you wanted to build it with are kind of not working out or seem to be falling away this particular week. Remember, waning moon cycles. So if the players aren't quite fitting where they need to be in the puzzle for the continuation of what it is you want to make happen, then it's totally appropriate to send them away with love at this point. Like, okay, this isn't quite working out as we intended. That's fine. I'm sure that the right candidates or people will come in next. So it's a good time to be releasing if there are people or situations that aren't quite coming together the way you had intended. One thing about being in the middle of these eclipses is they bring light to things that just aren't coming together. On the other hand, it can be a really terrific time to kind of pulse things in that, okay, these are the people we want. I'm thinking of an example. There's a conversation group I've been putting together for language learning. And we met again today, and people were saying, well, what was your vision? And I said, my main vision was putting together motivated people. And then I figured we would come to a way to do all this. And sure enough, different ideas, energetic exchange, and there's this igniting energy that happens in between eclipses, even though we're in the waning moon cycles. So the value is if you have clear intention of what it is you want to wrap up, get in position for what ideally is going to take off with that fresh start at the end of the week. So the moon in Leo on Wednesday specifically, it hit some challenges because Pluto is in early degree of Aquarius. That's the opposite sign of Leo. And remember that the planet Saturn is in late degree of Pisces now as it's retrograde, and before it really completes and gets finally into Aries for a couple of years. So this is a bit of tension that we encounter periodically, depending on where the moon is, because there is early degree of certain planets and late degree of others. So at times we're working through this kind of minefield as we're getting to what we want to achieve or what our intention is. So the most valuable thing on the morning of Wednesday, or actually before you go to sleep Tuesday night, is that you're clear on what it is you want to bring about in the coming days, or with whom you want to bring it it about, or what is the creative process you're inviting in, or giving attention to. Remember, waning moon cycle, completing, setting up, clearing out for what comes next. It doesn't mean we can't start things, because sometimes that's when uh, somebody comes in, the contract is signed, things start to begin, a baby is born. So things certainly happen. But what we're looking for is, where are the challenges presenting themselves? What am I feeling is perhaps a power play or something I have to engage in or move through in order to get where I want to go? Leo is the sign of courage, among other things. Okay, it's the lion, the cowardly lion sometimes. But what motivated the lion? Love. And I love the information I got, so many years ago, about the best warriors who were considered in certain tribes were ones who knew that there was stuff to be afraid about. It wasn't like they were hell-bent running into danger, but they went in with calculated courage, like, this is something I have to do. And I know I may not come out alive. So I'm not suggesting that's necessarily the case for all of us on these couple of days. But I do say that if you wake up or you're feeling a sense of apprehension, or what happens if I do this? And again, one of the things that's particularly highlighted at this point of time of intense change is, many of us wonder, well, what happens if? What happens if it all changes? What happens if I move? I lose my job. I quit my job. I leave my lover. I get a divorce. What happens if I get married? If I have a baby? These things of intense highlighted change always bring up the unknown, because as much as we might want to bring it in or invite the situation, we really don't know what's going to happen. By the same token, with life as we know it, we can't take that for granted either. Things happen that make change if we're not the architect of change. So anyway, this day for some of us may feel a bit, especially in the early morning or the night before, we may feel as though something is a challenge, something has to be met. And it also depends on your astrology and where Leo falls in your horoscope or Aquarius falls in your horoscope. But nonetheless, we all are experiencing this to some degree, even through peripheral ways. But the exciting thing for me about these couple of days is that when we move past or into whatever may feel like a challenge or something we have to work through, we are getting a lot of positive affirmation, either from ourselves or from encounters. Sometimes, many of us know, sometimes it comes from a total stranger, where you'll be doing something or engaging in something or taking action with something, and someone gives you a hand or support on a train, crossing a street, in a line. It can come, or through a smile. It can come through all different ways and directions. But these days, Wednesday and Thursday, are terrific days for moving with that sense of childlike adventure for what it is you want to create and make happen, and a conviction that you are here at this point in time to attract light, give light, and create. So, terrific days, whatever your project is. Confusion may kick in a bit on Thursday evening for some of us, late afternoon, mixed messages, not quite getting the results or information that you wanted or need. It will pass. So if you can avoid locking into something at that point in time, it may well be the best choice. The moon goes foot, of course, at 8:21 a.m. on Friday the 19th. So anything you can get out off your desk into motion, in the mail, text, whatever messages need to get out there and done or started or completed, the ideal is by then. If not, the moon will enter the sign of Virgo on 8:23 a.m. and then this builds to that eclipse. So here's the thing. We are in the dark of moon cycle on Friday into Saturday. The actual eclipse occurs at 3:54 p.m. Eastern Time. It is the new moon at 29 degrees Virgo, 5 minutes. And as we're moving towards this eclipse, these are the things to keep in mind. Now, the eclipses happen every 18 years and change. So the last time this particular cycle, that's the Saros cycle, I should add, those eclipse cycles happen every 18 years and change. So the last time it occurred was 2007. So if some of you have memories of what was going on at that point in time in September-ish, 2007, late August, this is your return of that particular eclipse cycle. I certainly know what was going on for me. So what was happening, the theme of this particular eclipse cycle brings a lot of focus to people we love, anything that has to do with health issues, things that we want to communicate, points we want to get across. All these things are particularly highlighted at this point in time. So it's possible that some of us may be getting some news or something that comes in that, and remember the eclipse, and I'll talk about the dark moon period too, but I'm just letting you know when the eclipse happens, it often presents us with something very quick. It's like a door is open, a door is closed. And it can come in a dream, it can come in a symbol, it can come in, a message, an encounter. It's an offering in some way that gives us a opportunity to take action, follow through, or remember what it is that we're working on and through to create whatever we want to create. So the new moon that we're aiming towards is in late degree Virgo. And as some of you may well be aware with what I've said, that moon will be in opposition to Saturn in Pisces before it hits the absolute eclipse point. So it's a moon that is, the new moon is asking us to really step up to whatever it is we need to claim in our, I think, inner authority. Saturn, all the planetary symbols, among other things, are about pieces of our psyche. So Saturn is Lord Karma, the critic. It emphasizes boundaries for us, whether we have them or not, what the limitations feel like, our perceived limitations, how we discipline ourselves, and what we're afraid of, because nothing limits us as much as fear. I like to think about Saturn as my personal authority, my self authority. I personally, I have a very dominant placement of Saturn in my horoscope, and I spent much of my life working through an inner critic and voices of punitive authority that were emblematic of authority figures that I experienced. But what gets us to a point of peace and self-actualization is when we realize that we are in control of all these pieces of our psyche. We just have to be conscious of that. And when we're able to harness that authority voice, then we can determine our own place where we're going, our sense of boundaries, how we discipline ourselves, how we actually take action and move through fear. So I consider this particular eclipse beautifully highlighted for bringing us a sense of claiming that inner authority. So what do we do in the dark of moon days? Back to that. So on Friday and Saturday, these are periods of time when we can reflect on what am I determined to actualize in a different way. And if I have a voice in my head that is self-critical, punitive, perfectionist stuff, I still kind of lean towards, but I've also learned to develop a sense of it's good enough. Because, I love the quote by Anne Lamott, a wonderful writer. She says, perfectionism is a refusal to move ahead. And so it's really important to recognize if we are affected by it, when perfectionism or a sense of making it good enough is getting in our way of actually producing and moving on to the next thing. And since this new moon is so much about a fresh start, especially in relation perhaps with health or how we relate to loved ones, how well we're communicating with one another, then it's really important that we move in with whatever we might need to push back by if it scares us a little, and articulate something to get started on the conversation so that we can find our way to what's good enough to connect in ways that make us more whole. Because right now so many people are so fractured or polarized. And it's no mistake, I am sure, that this eclipse falls on the UN International Day of Peace. So, peace within, peace without. The moon goes void, of course, at 3:54 p.m. on that Sunday. It enters Libra at 5:41 p.m. And the early evening can be a little more fraught with, okay, we came to this nice point of resolution. We want to kick off and make things happen, but super important to work on prioritizing. That's the way to maximize how we begin the coming week in a way that makes us more peaceful, more present, and more okay with whatever happens to be good enough.
You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.